Off is a 2008 RPG Maker game created by Unproductive Funtime. It is also a very good game. It features an amazingly written story, as well as great music and several other positive attributes I'll get to. This review is specifically about the recent remaster of the game, but a lot of this review applies to any version of it. The first thing I'll discuss is the plot. It surrounds the Batter, a being on a vague quest to purify the world. He must venture through three main zones, along with two other more distinct areas, purifying them of evil specters with the help of a cat named the Judge and a shopkeeper named Zachary. The plot gets a lot more in-depth than that, but I won't go into detail for fear of spoilers. But rest assured, it is quite good. The game's writing as a whole is also pretty great. It's very surreal and art house feeling, very distinct from most other games it's usually grouped in with. Also, a brief side note, it really confuses me that this game is made in shared fandoms with stuff like Deltarune, when to me it feels a lot more adjacent to stuff like David Lynch movies or House of Leaves or something. But maybe that's just me. The game has a pretty small cast of characters, but they're all consistently great and very enjoyable to interact with. The game also sometimes implements some horror elements, which aren't really scary or anything at any point, but they are still very well done and consistently unsettling. The only major gripe I have with the game at this point, i.e. the remastered version, besides the music which I'll get to later, is the meta elements present throughout the game. They aren't super prominent, but occasionally a character will say something like, "Oh boy, this sure is a video game we're playing here," which comes across as super forced to me and unfitting with the rest of the game. But again, maybe that's just me. The combat in the original version of the game was pretty bad. At the very least, most of the fights didn't stretch out for very long, but they were all incredibly easy and felt like a distraction from the significantly more interesting puzzles, exploration, and story. The combat in the remaster has improved significantly, though. It's still very similar to the original, being pretty basic active time-based RPG combat, but the balancing is significantly better, mainly just in regards to enemy health and damage, which are both increased a fair bit, making certain parts of the game not exactly tough, but at least requiring a bit of effort to get through. The combat is still not amazing, but I would say it's more than passable and definitely much better than the originals. In contrast to the combat, the puzzles in the game are much better. They're often very obtuse, but very clever and fun to figure out, and there's a lot more variety in them compared to the combat. I won't spoil any of them, but they are very enjoyable to try to solve, and probably the best part of the gameplay. The music, composed by alias Conrad Caldwood, is also fantastic, although there's an asterisk to that I'll mention in a second. The soundtrack of the original game is definitely some of the best video game music I've listened to. It traverses a wide range of genres and moods, but nails all of them, and it perfectly fits the surreal vibe of the game. However, as a result of somewhat complicated rights stuff I won't get into, several other artists composed a new soundtrack for the remaster, which is the only part of the new version I think is way worse than the original. The new music isn't necessarily bad in isolation, but compared to the original soundtrack it definitely is. Just generally less fitting and more generic. It's not a huge deal, but I would definitely recommend getting the mod online that lets you put the original OST back in if you're playing the remaster. The art style of the game is also quite good. As you can see, it's very simplistically drawn and geometric, at least in the overworld, but it works really well for the game and helps with the somewhat uncanny atmosphere of the entire thing. The battle sprites are a bit more complex, being drawn on paper and scanned into the game, and they also look great. One of my other complaints with the remaster is that, despite not touching most of the game's art, they added some extra animations and flair to stuff like the menu and the chest opening animation, which does look objectively better, but I think the added flair takes away from the game's vibe a bit. It makes it feel a little less surreal. The battle UI in the remaster is much better, though. In terms of new content added in the remaster, there isn't a whole lot. Apart from some new border artwork you can find in chests, the main new content added in the remaster is the addition of 6 new optional bosses of varying difficulty, scattered throughout the world. I have no idea what their implications in the lore are, since their dialogue is even more vague than most of the main games, but they're consistently fun, challenging, and unique fights that I would definitely recommend checking out. I'd say along with the improvements to the combat, they make the remaster worth buying even if you've played the original. It definitely makes it a fun new experience. In conclusion, the Off remaster is really good, and improves on everything from the already great original game, apart from some music and UI stuff, which isn't that big of a deal. Overall, I would highly recommend either version of the game, but the remaster is definitely the better of the two in my opinion. Thanks for watching.